She never expected to become a hero that night, but fate had other plans. Sarah Mitchell was just another traveler on a freezing winter road, eager to get home before the storm worsened. The thermometer on her dashboard flashed warnings. 4 degrees, dropping fast. Snow blanketed everything in sight, painting the world in icy stillness. But then, something caught her eye, a dark shape, hidden among the trees. Her heart pounded as she slowed the car, squinting through the swirling snow. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't a fallen branch. It was a dog, a German shepherd, tied to a tree, covered in frost, barely breathing. Sarah slammed on the brakes, her pulse skyrocketing. She threw the car into park and jumped out, the cold slicing through her coat like a blade. The wind howled, but she barely noticed. Every step toward the dog sent ice crunching beneath her boots. And then she saw him, really saw him. His fur was stiff with frost, ribs protruding from his sides. The rope around his neck was frozen solid, biting deep into his skin. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. No response. Sarah dropped to her knees, her hands shaking as she pressed her fingers against his side. A faint rise, a shallow breath. He was alive, but just barely. She yanked at the rope, desperate to free him, but it wouldn't budge. Ice had turned it into an unbreakable knot, trapping him against the tree. Her stomach twisted. He had been left here, abandoned, forgotten, left to die. Her mind raced. She had to act now. Frantically, she reached into her pocket, her numb fingers curling around her car keys. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. She jammed the metal into the icy knot, twisting, scraping, fighting to break the rope's grip. The dog whimpered weakly, his eyes flickering open for just a second. That's when Sarah saw it. Not just pain, not just exhaustion, but hope. "Stay with me, buddy," she whispered. The ice cracked, the rope loosened, and with one final pull, snap. The dog collapsed into her arms. Sarah barely had time to react before panic set in. He wasn't moving. His body was cold, too cold. She wrapped her coat around him, shielding him from the brutal wind. Then, lifting him into her arms, she staggered back to the car. He was light, too light for a dog his size. How long had he been out here? She didn't know, but she knew one thing. She wasn't leaving him behind. The engine roared to life. Sarah cranked the heat, blasting warmth toward the trembling shepherd. But it wasn't enough. His breathing was weak, his body ice. "Come on, buddy," she whispered, pressing her bare hands against his fur, trying to transfer what little warmth she had left. For miles, she drove through the icy darkness, her heart pounding with every shallow breath he took. And then, just when she thought she was too late, a sound, a faint, broken whimper. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. He was still fighting. She pushed the gas pedal to the floor, speeding toward the only place that could save him. The vet clinic doors burst open. "I need help!" A team rushed forward, taking the shepherd from Sarah's arms. He was whisked away in a blur of white coats and urgent voices. Sarah stood frozen, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She had done everything she could. Now it was up to him. Minutes turned into hours. She sat in the waiting room, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. The rhythmic ticking of the clock felt deafening. And then, the door creaked open. Dr. Emily Carter stepped out, her face unreadable. Sarah jumped to her feet. He's alive." Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave. "He's extremely weak," Dr. Carter continued, but his vitals are stabilizing. His body temperature is rising. It's too soon to tell, but he's still fighting. Sarah let out a shaky breath. That was all she needed to hear. She followed the vet into the treatment room. The shepherd lay wrapped in heated blankets, an oxygen mask over his muzzle. He looked so small, so fragile. Sarah leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "You're safe now, buddy." And for the first time, his ear twitched. Then came the shock. The vet checked for a microchip. He had one. And the name that came up, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She knew that name, a respected business owner, a man people in town trusted. And he had left this dog to die. Her hands curled into fists. Not anymore. The phone call was short, cold. "We have a dog registered to your name, Doctor," Carter said. The response? A bitter chuckle. "Oh, that mutt," the man scoffed. "Got rid of him days ago." Sarah's blood boiled. "You tied him to a tree and left him in a blizzard," she snapped, barely keeping her voice steady. A pause. Then, the man laughed. "Lady, it's just a dog." Sarah's fists clenched. Dr. Carter's voice was ice. "So you're surrendering ownership?" "Do what you want," the man muttered. "I don't care." The line went dead. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Dr. Carter turned to her, a small smile breaking through the tension. "He's yours." A soft whimper came from the treatment room. Sarah rushed inside. The German shepherd, her dog, was looking at her. His eyes, once lifeless, held something new. Trust. She reached out, gently running her fingers through his fur. "You're not alone anymore." And for the first time, the German shepherd, who had been left for dead, closed his eyes and rested, because he was finally home.